You want us to wait, or?
No, we can go ahead and get
Okay.
started.
All right. We're ready. All right. Thank y'all for joining us today. This is, we're going to open this meeting of the collective bargaining session between the City of Alice and the Alice Police Officers Association. The time is 9:44 in the morning. And once again, this is the first session of the collective bargaining labor agreement between the City of Alice and the Alice Police Officers Association. This is where this meeting is where the association will present their proposal to the city, and then we'll get time to review it, and we'll have some discussion about their proposal, and then if there's something that can be agreed on, it'd be agreed on. If not, we'll have additional meetings. On the city side, we have our chief negotiator, Mr. Rick Novato, to my left with Denton Novato. I'm here myself on the team, Michael Esparza, interim city manager, Ms. Diana Lopez, our risk manager, Ms. B. Moreno, our HR specialist, and Mr. Roland Ramos, our director of finance. For the association, we have Mr. Anika Saenz is the chief negotiator, correct, Mr. Saenz?
Yes.
And we also have with the with CLEAT, Mr. Ernie Flores. And we also have Raul David Valadez on the association side.
I'm missing an alternate. My
May
two
show up.
team members are off.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and then on that score, I mean, you guys got authority to proceed on this, right? I mean, we don't have I'm asking, you're fine with your group, right, just to speak
Right,
for
for
your
now, yes,
association?
yeah. It's
Okay.
just gonna be introduction or introducing our proposal.
Okay.
I didn't wanna reschedule again.
No, I agree. I agree.
We're already mid-June already.
Yeah, we agree with that.
Did y'all wanna, need to start with the proposal, or? Well, I'm sorry, but I gave y'all the black and white version, but mine is in red to denote the changes that we were looking at making. And of course, on the heading page, we added our logo, and we'd like to propose, the first proposal is to extend the contract from 18 to 20 instead of doing a 1 year. We did that last time, and we're here 2 years later trying to renegotiate, so it just, to me, it's a little smarter to just make it 2 years, and then we can sit back down, and it gives y'all time to look at things as well. That's on the very first page, and of course, that was done at the bottom of every page. On page 1 of the contract under number 4, authority and term, that's again where I've scratched the 1 year to 2 years and added it for it to begin October 1st, 2018 through September 30th of 2020. That same change was made under Article B. But it should, which is giving us the holdover year for 2020 to 2021. So we cannot come to an agreement by 2020. And that same date change was made to Article C, the determination date of it being September 30th, 2021. Next changes you'll find were on page 4 under Article 9. Under the additional promotional provisions, we made some changes and added, I don't know if I added Article B. I believe I added.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and it looks like you've got in our copy, I understand it's not a color copy, but you've got
Yes, I made
a
changes.
darker version, which all appears to be new. Is that right?
On the original contract, Article B was the passing grade, a promotional candidate for any rank must first achieve a passing test score of 70% or better on the exam itself before any additional points may be added to a test.
Right.
On this, we've added that we agreed to implement a promotional system for the ranks of corporal, sergeant, and lieutenant with the department to include an assessment process at the ranks of sergeant and lieutenants. Now, we've discussed this with the Civil Service Director and Mrs. Lopez in regards to the assessment centers. It further reads that the rank of corporal will continue with a promotional system in place, issuing a written exam only with a passing grade of 70% considered for promotion for any qualified candidate. The promotional candidate for any rank must achieve a passing test score of 70% or better on the exam itself before any additional points may be added to a test result. The assessment process may be conducted to evaluate the following dimensions on problem solving, analysis, judgment, landing, and organization, role communication, leadership, decisiveness, self-initiative, adaptability, interpersonal skill, written communication skills through written and oral communications, role-playing, and memo report writing. C, we've added the qualified candidate for promotion to the rank of corporal should be an officer with a minimum of 2 years of interrupted service with the Alice Police Department and a minimum of, I'd like to change the 4 to a 3. I didn't realize that was 4 years. But it's a minimum of 3 years of full-time, I'm sorry, no, that's correct. I was reading it wrong. Minimum of 4 years of full-time law enforcement experience with a minimum of an intermediate certificate. Now on that, of course, it's the 2 years here plus 2 years of previous experience anywhere else. We're asking for them to have at least 4 years of experience total in law enforcement before they're able to promote to the rank of corporal.
And they would need the 4 years anyway to have the intermediate, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It could be here, it could be 2 years somewhere else and 2 years here. It can, and I explained that it can be a combination with another agency at a full-time level. The rank of sergeant will require at least 2 years of serving as a corporal with the Alice Police Department with uninterrupted service with at least 6 years minimum experience as a full-time officer and a minimum of an advanced certificate. That can be in combination with other agencies at a full-time position. The rank of lieutenant will require at least 2 years of uninterrupted service serving at the rank of sergeant with the Alice Police Department and a minimum of 8 years of experience at full-time and a minimum of an advanced certificate. Experience can be in combination with other agencies at full-time. And our goal there is just to provide the department with more experienced supervisors. And of course, showing initiative to have their certificates in place as well. On D, we've added the sergeant's promotional written exam will count as 50% of the raw score. Participation in an assessment center will count as 50% of the raw score. The minimum score of 70% on the written exam shall be considered passing with eligibility to continue on to the assessment center or process. A failing grade disqualifies you from the assessment process and the candidate will not continue with the process. On the lieutenant's promotional exam, it will count as 40% of the raw score. Participation in the assessment process will count as 60% of the raw score. And a minimum score of 70 of the written examination will be considered passing with eligibility to continue the assessment process. Failing grade disqualifies you from the assessment process, thus there will be no participation in that process. After combining the two with a grade of 70% higher, then and only will the additional scoring points be added. Those are the changes we make to that. We ought to consider. On F, we've made a couple of changes there. You'll see a strike through with the 1 additional point for each year of service in the city of Alice. We have struck through city of and just single dot to the Alice Police Department. The officers have kind of made that a point that they wanted only the years of service with the PD counted towards the extra points. And the rest remain the same, A, B, C, and D. We have added E, F, and G. Where there is a points to be added, we have added points to be subtracted from it. And you'll see E, if you've received a reprimand, and all this is in compliance with only if it's in their personnel file. I don't believe I read that, but that's the first thing that needs to be, the human resources would go through their personnel file to see if any of these things are here. And at the end of the score, a reprimand will subtract 2 points within 2 years of the test if supported with written disciplinary findings. Under F, a suspension would subtract 4 points per suspension with within 2 years of test if supported with written disciplinary findings. And on G, G, a demotion would subtract 6 points within 2 years of test if supported by written disciplinary findings. And these are only things that are gonna be in the personnel file. Not-
You're talking the official A file, right?
Correct. And I don't know if I worded it like that, but I might have to change, or we might have to change it to that. On 3, we left the same, military, 5 points, and the rest remain the same. On G, for the tie-breaking procedure, we have struck you, like I previously explained, the officers simply want the seniority, the Alice Police Department to be considered, not the seniority of service as an employee with the city of Alice. We made no other changes until Article B, which is just the year changes. Again, on wages and pay, we just added that everything would start on the 2018. On overtime pay, we have made an addition.
Yeah, no, you were gonna say something.
I'm sorry, where, on what now?
Oh, I'm sorry, on Article 13. For overtime pay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're done with 9 and a lot of changes in 9, and then we go over to overtime, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on page 8.
Oh, wait.
Article 13 on overtime pay 8.
Oh, he's jumping.
Y'all
So
follow?
nothing to 10, 11,
No,
12?
no the only changes that were made to anything was the year. So we made, like on 12, we just added 2018. Those are the only changes that we made, or where the year was changed. The next change, like I said, comes on Article 13, overtime pay, Section 8. We have added an exception for the overtime pay. Exception for overtime pay will be made when an officer requested and received an approved day off, but then is scheduled to work that same week, making the rate paid as straight. If it is mandated that after an officer has taken off an authorized requested day, that he be paid at the overtime rate. And an explanation of that is, what officers have come to me and explained is, they're requesting time off on their days, on their regular days. They're being approved, they're taking, and an example would be they're working Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they took on Monday and Tuesday. They're approved for those days off, but then they're mandated to work Friday and Saturday.
Actually, it
on
would be
mandatory
Friday.
overtime.
The
So
Saturday
they'd
would
be
be the
off their
following week.
days off requested, but then they're gonna come back to work Friday and Saturday, and that would go to straight time, or within the week's time.
Yeah, what happens is, like, since our work week starts Saturday and ends on Friday, if, and it's easier to kind of calculate this way.
Yeah.
I'm working Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday,
You're off Wednesday.
and
Thursday.
I'm off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I've requested Saturday and Sunday off, and then come Friday, I'm mandated to come back in on a mandatory overtime list. Well, the city getting a great benefit out of it, because now they're just paying this guy straight time. The officer is losing his overtime rate at this point.
You know,
He's like,
It's not,
paid
it's not
overtime.
really, it's not so much a mandatory overtime, it's a unscheduled duty tour.
Yeah, no, it's a mandatory overtime list. It's
Actually,
listed as
that's what the
mandatory
list says,
overtime.
Mandatory overtime.
Okay, well, to me, mandatory overtime means that you're ordered to come in, and you have
That's
to
exactly
come
what's
in whether
happening.
you're scheduled or not, and that you're gonna get paid overtime, but it doesn't sound like you are in fact getting paid overtime.
No,
We're not.
They're getting, well,
So
they're
why
not
are
getting.
you calling it mandatory overtime is what I don't understand.
Let me,
That's, they could show you the.
Yeah, there's
they'll
actually a
put it up
list
the
that they
wall
put
right
up on the wall,
It
and,
says that?
and it says mandatory overtime.
Okay.
You're scheduled for vacation, if somebody else is taking vacation. So I take Saturday and Sunday off. So somebody got scheduled to work for me Saturday and Sunday to cover my shift. But now, because I took off that week, I may get Friday or on my days off. Well, you already had 2 extra days off the week, and you're gonna fill in this guy because now Enrique's off Friday, Thursday, Friday, and so you're gonna need to cover for him on Friday.
So what you're, to make sure I understand completely, it's not that you're asking for overtime, because right now it's FLSA overtime, you're getting the straight rate, because
Right.
there's no physical 40 hours in the week.
Correct.
What you're asking for, so that I understand, is those hours be paid at 1.5 times your base
Correct.
salary, not at an overtime
Right.
rate.
If you are mandated to work
It's unscheduled duty time.
So it.
You're
that's how
ordered
y'all
to
want-
show up and it's not in your normal schedule.
Right.
And you're
And that
saying-
apparently has happened a lot.
You're saying, that's fine, we'll do that, but we'd like it to be paid at time and a half.
Right.
Okay,
I didn't know how else to word it, so that's how.
That's okay.
So y'all
We
did
will.
put it in correctly.
Well, and the only reason I'm being picky about the words that we use is that some of these terms are, carry legal connotations, like using overtime, and that has a very specific meaning under federal law.
right.
But, sometimes we're really not talking about the federal law, we're just talking about, hey, if we have to work under these conditions, we'd like it to be paid at time and a half. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's overtime, it's just a specialized, agreement saying, if we have to work under these conditions, i.e. unscheduled duty, off my regular schedule, we'd like it to be paid at time and a half.
Then it would-
And
I
so,
guess we
just
have-
to avoid
So
confusion,
that we get
We'll just fix the language on it.
Yeah.
And like I said, that was something that they were concerned about, which I agree. I know I can't work any overtime if I've taken days off. So, if I do, it goes to straight to them. So I understand that part.
But we're using 40 hours for OT,
Use
not
40 hours for
the
OT.
43 allowed by federal law.
No, we're not.
So we're following the state law
following
on
the
that,
state law.
of you having to use 40, right?
Yes, sir.
Next change was made or addition is on Article 14, paid time off holidays, to a article or section D on personal days. This is again something Patrol has come to me with. We currently get the 16 hours of personal days, which is 2 days for the normal 8-hour shift or 8-hour employee. Our patrol are scheduled and are on a 10-hour shift, 4 days a week. That's what their work shift is. What they're asking for is for them to get the additional 4 hours to have the 2 personal days, and in lieu of having to use 4 hours of vacation time to take that other day off. So, and it's only for the people that are scheduled to work the 10-hour schedule shift. That's on number 14, section D.
And how is that related to holidays?
I don't know, that's where y'all have it. Y'all have it under paid time off holidays. Because the city gives.
Well, but you're proposing new language, D.
No, the, personal days is already in there, I believe.
Well, it's underlined, but it's underlined.
Right. And-
So
and
is that-
that's correct. I could have-
Is that new?
Yeah, that might be,
So it's
Well, if
not,
it's underlined, I'm assuming it's new.
well, and again, I'm not that good at doing
so it has,
Check.
I mean, I'm
not
just,
necessarily tying it to holiday would be a separate article.
Right, I added that article.
Okay.
so is personal days part of y'all's proposal?
Well, we already did it through the city.
You're just trying,
There-
what you're trying to do is match it with the schedule.
Right.
So,
The way that, it's a benefit that's allowable under the personnel manual, not in the contract. Their day is defined as 8 hours, so they get 8 hours of leave for personal. What he's saying is because they're working 10-hour shifts, they'd like to have it in the contract defined for personal days, 10 hours per day.
Okay,
For
so-
patrol duty. Because the 8-hour shift employees don't have an issue because we get our 2 days. But for patrol, who have the different shift schedules, they lose 4 vacation time, 4 hours vacation time every time they try to use the second day.
Okay, so let me catch up here. You're telling me that that this D that's underlined is something that the city is already doing for
Right.
the officers,
For
but it's
everybody.
not coming out of the contract, it's coming out of something you're doing pursuant to your personnel manual, which I'm
Right.
not familiar with this practice. And so what they're saying is, we want to now, so the personnel manual is something the city can change whenever it wants. And they're saying, well, that one, we want it in the contract so that the city cannot change it whenever it wants. And we want to continue the practice.
Well,
That's where we're at, right?
I guess. I mean,
Well-
however, it can, I know it was done, I think, for fire, so, and I don't know if that language was done.
No, they still define their
Well, I'm
day as
just pointing
12.
out that that's what that means,
Their days are
okay?
12.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not weighing in on the merits or
days.
demerits of it at all. I'm just being a lawyer here and pointing out that
So we wouldn't.
I was
change it.
unaware that the city was providing this benefit to the bargaining group pursuant to a practice or policy from the personnel manual. That's fine. That's a policy decision that the city gets to make. All I'm saying is, now it's here in this proposal as D, and if we move it into the contract, you know, it's gonna be locked into the contract. Whereas right now, if the city were to say, well, we wanna modify the personnel policy, the city is free to modify that policy whenever it wants. So that's just so that we appreciate that distinction, you know?
I mean,
And if the city says, we don't care, that's fine. I mean, we're gonna caucus on it, but if they say, we don't care if it's in the contract or not, it ain't gonna change anyway, or whatever, then that's fine. I mean, but that's just so that it,
No, I
you know, we
understand.
understand
It's
the
just a proposal
consequences
for y'all
of
to
it.
consider.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all it is. It's not anything, I mean, we're asking for y'all to consider it.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
There's no more changes made to that, article or Article 15. There's an Article 16 change, which is the paid vacation time off, vacation leave. And again, that might be a subject under the personnel manual, because this is all, actually, this is under the civil service, correct? Section B, we're capped at 160 hours, and I think that's a personnel manual issue. I don't think that's actually civil service. The problem we've been having there is officers are losing hours on their vacation every year because they're not taking them. But it's not because they're not wanting to take them, it's because they're being denied days off. They're being denied vacation time, so at the end of the year, they lose sometimes 30, 40 hours because they weren't able to take them throughout the year. So what I'd like to do is extend that from 160 hours to 200 hours, only if they can provide proof that they were denied their time off. You understand what I'm saying? I'll read it to you, but that's basically what they're
Yeah.
asking for.
So basically, you're saying you're saying that even with the existing accrual authorization of 160, that officers are not, in fact, able to use those,
Right.
and then that's a scheduling issue?
From what I understand, like I said, this is coming from patrol, and it could have been because they've been shorthanded for almost 2 years. So the guys were putting them in, getting denied. Well, here comes September, and if they don't use them by October 1st.
Yeah, they're
they
gone.
lost them. So they're trying to do it at the very last minute, and they end up losing.
And you did.
And is
Did they
there,
not make a request to have
Yes,
those
that's
hours
what I'm saying.
extended?
Their request for previous days off, vacation days.
No, but they have the ability to request those hours be extended past September 30th. Because I know there's two that did.
Well, I know that one of the officers came to me and said he lost like 32 hours. Because he
And where
wasn't
did-
able to take them.
where does that request come from?
Because it's not
It
in
should
the,
come from the officer to the department head.
No, but what authorizes it?
The personnel manual.
Okay, so we're going back to the manual again?
see, and that might, if they don't come to me, I can't help them, or I can't ask somebody that might know. So I know one officer came to me, he said he lost about 32 hours. And the
Well-
only reason we want this in here is so they'll understand if they can provide you proof, or they can provide proof, and it's gonna have to be written proof. And I believe the lieutenant does deny he'll write denied on their request and gives it back to them. So that's a written proof that he denied their request.
Okay, yeah, well, we have a conflict with the
Right, and again,
labor
that's-
agreement, because it basically says you can't even request that, you just basically lose it. Sounds like what's happened, it sounds to me like what's happened is that the contract says you can't have more than 160 hours. And if you go over that, you lose them. What I'm hearing now is that there's a practice that that some people, I guess, know about, that you ask for a carryover of those
It
as
is.
per the personnel manual.
It's in Article 16C. Utilization of vacation leave shall be handled in accordance with the provisions of the personnel manual.
Okay, and the manual says
Says
you
you can
can
request an extension.
request
Of how
an
long?
extension.
It doesn't
Okay,
define,
so-
but it's up to the supervisor to determine how long.
So is that happening?
No, that, like I said, this officer apparently didn't know and didn't ask anybody, but he came to me here recently, and told me about it, and I'm like, well, I couldn't help you now, I said, you came to me then, I could have helped you. I would have at least made some phone calls and find out what they could have done. But again, these are things that the supervisors aren't explaining to them either.
Because I think that's how,
Really,
we've dealt with this before, and I think that was the answer to the last set of negotiations on this topic was, we're gonna cap it, but then we're gonna give a little discretion under the PPM to, ask to carry, and that resides with who, Diana?
It'd be the supervisor and the chief.
From what I've understood is they've been allowed to carry the hours over only to December, and they have to take them off by December. Now, I could be wrong, but the few that I have talked to that were allowed to carry them over, have been told they had to use them by December 31st, or they would lose them. And again, I don't know where that's written, but that's what's being used.
It sounds to me like it's coming from the discretion given to the chief as per the PPM, where he's saying,
I guess we'd like to put it somewhere where it's a little bit more, we need to explain it a little bit more, and I don't think they should lose them in 30 days or in
90 days.
If they've tried for 12 months to take them off and they were denied. I mean, that's my point. If they tried for the last year to take off some of that time and they were denied, they're only getting another 90 days.
Yeah, it would seem like they would get that extension if
they should.
if it was followed through properly.
And I don't know why this gentleman didn't, but I understand he lost some out. And I don't know, he said it was 30 something. Again, I don't know. I
well,
don't
already though, and I do want to point out that this article starts out saying, we're gonna work off of the statute first. The statute says you get 15 days. That's 15 times 8 is what? Is
20 hours.
120.
They're allowed,
Now it's basically saying, well, and so then if you don't use them by the end of the year, you lose them. That's a straight up civil service baseline, okay? So we've said you can have up to 160. That's what B says. It says you can have up to 160, so it extends the statute by
5 days,
40 hours.
40 hours.
And then it specifically addresses utilization and says, we're gonna handle it under the PPM, and then you're telling me the PPM lets the chief give some wiggle room on that. And then we're providing for vacation leave payout up to 160.
Which is more than
Which
the
the statute ordinarily would not let you have anything.
That's right.
It would be 0, because you don't get to carry it over. So the city's saying here, we'll pay you out up to 160, which is the same as the cap, I would point out.
Yes, sir.
And then E says, this overrides the manual, so this article is the Bible when it comes to vacation leave. And it says, and we override the statute. So it overrides the manual, unless specifically said. So I know that we wrestled with this problem before. We may need to talk to the chief to get some specifics about, how many people
How
are being
many
called
hours.
in, how many, are we not able to schedule people, are we not able to hold to giving them the time off? I mean, what is the problem here? And are people asking you to, extend the time, or what is in fact happening on that front? I think that's what we,
Well, we know they're
sounds to me like
short.
you're getting feedback from your people about.
We know they're short already because we already had to freeze, 7 positions a couple years ago, so that already put them short. And they're short officers now. Pretty much what we'll end up doing is just refer back to the policy manual, see what we can implement in there, The other concern I would have, if they're continuously getting denied through that period, and they do get that extension, and they continue to get denied, what do we do after that?
Yeah.
So we just want to fix something up just to put it in there.
And it's also,
In other words, it's still a problem and it's not fixed.
Right. So we'll come back to it and need to look at the policy manual.
One final question, just so that I understand your proposed language. You're also asking that they have a possible buyout option up to the 200?
yes, oh, and that's only, like he said, addressing that on the separation part. If you're
Right,
leaving,
right.
if you can provide that you try to take off 80 hours this year, or even 120, and you can give him all the denials for whatever reason you were denied, you know, it's not fair for him to lose out on any time at all. And even if, you know, he tried to take his vacation, or she tried to take their vacation, but were denied for whatever reason. And I know it could be where we're shorthanded, and they're just not keeping track, because they don't have a system to keep track of how many times I've denied this officer, because they give them back their request. They don't keep them. So,
Well, it's not documented,
no.
how many times that's been
Well,
requested and
Because what the
denied?
officers are required to do is they fill in a time request leave, or for leave off.
Sure.
They turn it in, they give it to their supervisor. If he approves it, he signs it, turns it in. Or if he denies it, he'll put denied on it and give it back to you. And you can't take that time off. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know what system they have in place now, but I'm just relaying what I've been told.
Okay.
So, that was what you talked about on Article D, was the exception of it. If it didn't
Yeah, I think we
provide y'all-
understand that.
That's something y'all says y'all are gonna try to figure out. There are no changes to 17, 18, 19, 20. At 21, association activity, all I've done is added on Article D, under the association for bargaining, the duly designated members of the association bargaining team shall be permitted to attend bargaining session and/or bargaining team meetings. And that's only when we wanna meet, if the guys are working, so that we will attend a team meeting to talk about what we wanna do. And it's allowed right now, but I don't know if there'll become a time where it's not allowed. I can't get together with my team because they're all working. But like the other three members are members of the patrol division. So their schedules are all different, so I don't know. And it's just something in there that I like in there. 19 to 22, no changes. 22, 23, 24, 25. Article 26, internal investigation process. This has been a big hiccup for us for the last year. We're having a lot of issues with this. I've added some language in there to hopefully, and there's even stuff that I forgot to add in that we've discussed. On Article C, on C1, it read the administrative complaint about an officer misconduct was verbally recorded and regardless of its source will be provided to that officer before any final appealable disciplinary action can be imposed. Written notice of a complaint will be provided within a reasonable time after the chief is made aware of the alleged misconduct, unless mitigating circumstances arise. I've added in there, and because what's happening is they're not getting some of the officers have not gotten the complaints at all. And yet, again, that's something they didn't come to me with to tell me so I could try to sort that out beforehand. So I've added in here an administrative complaint about an officer misconduct, whether verbal or recorded, and regardless of its source, will be provided to that officer within 3 business days of receipt. Written notice of the complaint will be provided within 3 business days after the chief is made aware of the alleged misconduct unless mitigating circumstances allow. And all we're doing is giving him a time frame now, so we'll make sure he can comply and give us a copy, or give that officer a copy of the complaint. Because we've had some that have not gotten them.
Well, how do you comply with that with a verbal complaint?
We just threw verbal in there because some of the times they do tend to take action on verbal complaints. So if he's gonna take action on it, he needs to at least let you know what the verbal complaint was.
So you're telling me the chief is imposing discipline based on a verbal complaint?
Sometimes. This is what
Oh, really?
Not me, but.
I'd
and
like
again, those are the ones where he has the ability to, tell an officer, give him a day off or 2 without taking vacation. That's what I've been told. I again, I've tried to fight these things, but it's after months.
That's
The verbal,
written in your original.
yeah, and it was written in there anyway. That's why I read it to you first.
What? What's
It was
that?
already written in like
It's in
that.
the original contract that y'all just provided us right now,
It's
where
actually
the,
already written in there.
whether verbal or recorded is listed in the original contract.
What original contract are you talking about?
The one that we did last time.
The 2016, 2017 contract?
Yeah.
It was already written like that. He's right. I just read. The only thing I've added in there are the time frames.
Let me see.
And again, I know there's been
On the
some
original
verbal
contract, page
Creative
14.
complaint. Right, but you're saying, you're striking that language, which is one, and you're striking it, and you're replacing it with language that says,
The same
a
thing.
complaint, whether verbal or recorded, and regardless, will be provided within 3 business days. So,
It's
I
using
mean-
the same language I already had there. It's already there. I just added the dates. Because the biggest complaint is that we're not getting the copies of the complaints. I know on 2 occasions the officers didn't get them.
well, I'd like to see the circumstances under which officers are being disciplined, and they have not gotten an Article 26 notice. Because my understanding is that that's happening pretty religiously,
Well, here lately, yes, because I've been.
ever since it was negotiated.
And he's
There's
imposing.
been a couple of occasions where officers didn't get complaints.
And
because
they've
I've
not
asked them-
appealed those. They've not appealed those complaints.
And
One
he's
of them, I
imposing
think, was not
discipline.
disciplined, no. One of them was not disciplined, but he was told about the incident. And when I asked him for the complaint, he said, I never got one. What he got was a letter from the chief telling him some stuff, but it wasn't the actual complaint. Now, the Article 26 letter is just the letter.
It's a
They're not
notification.
attaching the complaints to it.
They should.
No, an
I'm
Article
talking about
26
the actual-
notice is a notice to the officer about a allegation of misconduct that has been brought against the
I'm not denying
officer.
the Article 26 letters aren't getting handed out, but they're not attaching the complaints to it.
Article 26 does not require that a complaint be
Well, that's
attached.
why
It's
I'm-
intended,
That's why I'm adding that.
it's intended to simply put the officer on notice about what the allegation is, so the officer can know what it is.
But the officer also should have the right to know who or what the complaint is about, not just a brief synopsis of what he read and put on there. So I
Well-
believe, in the letter, the previous one said it, that we would get a copy when the chief wanted to give it to us. It doesn't say, it doesn't give him a time limit. So, but the issue there was we weren't getting it, period. After I discussed it with the chief, he began giving them copies of the complaints.
So if a motorist comes in to complain about a stop, and the motorist comes and complains to the chief about the behavior of the officer on the stop, and makes allegations of inappropriate handling of the stop, and the motorist is not willing to sign a complaint, but the chief, so you're saying the chief cannot handle that. Let's say the chief talks to another passenger, or somebody talks to another passenger, and they corroborate the allegation, or there's another witness to the allegation, but nobody wants to sign anything. You're telling me that the chief cannot give you an Article 26 notice saying, I had this motorist come in, they complained about the stop, it happened on this day, it happened on your shift, you're the officer. I need you to, be aware of that, and I need you to give me a written response to this allegation. You're telling me that in the absence of a written complaint by that citizen, the chief cannot proceed.
Well, you just said, who doesn't want to give a written statement? Now you're saying gives a written statement.
No, I'm saying that the motorist does not want to give a statement, but the chief gives you gives that officer an Article 26 notice.
Of the original.
You're telling me, saying, this is a complaint that I received, it's a verbal complaint. You're telling me that doesn't work, that it
Correct.
has to be a signed and written complaint by the motorist.
The current contract that's in place, Section 2 says, "A notice to an officer advising of a complaint will contain at a minimum, a recitation of the factual basis of the complaint with sufficient specificity to allow the officer to be aware of
Right.
the alleged incident in question and to be able to provide a response to the allegations.
Right.
So whether it was verbal or written, for me reading this, I would think, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a police officer, and I'm reading this and I'm thinking, okay, so I pulled you over, you went in, you talked to the chief, you filed, you addressed an issue of
You complained about it?
about my professionalism on the stop.
Right.
He goes back, he reviews the body cam footage, he sees there's an issue.
There's an issue, okay?
Okay, so now he should be able to, based on what's written in the contract,
Follow through.
that he goes through and writes something up stating on such and such date, you conducted a traffic stop, this and this occurred, you were unprofessional, the violator that you contacted on this stop.
That's called an
Visited with
Article
me.
26 notice.
Right, but if is all that being placed on the Article 26? The things that actually, the factual
Well,
basis of the complaint?
Well, let me put it this way. To the extent that those are run by HR, I think HR is looking at Article 26 and making sure that there's compliance with Article 26. To the extent that some of those come for legal review with me or whoever, the starting point is, does this notice comply with Article 26? So as far as what I'm looking at, that's what we're looking at, and there ain't nothing coming out of my office that doesn't comply with Article 26. I think I can safely say that is happening with HR. Now, not everything comes to legal. A lot of things, and not everything comes to HR. There's nothing that says the chief can't do his own Article 26, and if he's sufficiently comfortable, but if he asks HR or if he asks legal, the response is always, Chief, get your contract, go to Article 26, and make sure that whatever you're going to tell the officer complies with the requirements of Article 26.
Be
Now,
specific dates, facts.
now, that's what's
rule
supposed to be
violations.
happening if he thinks there's a problem.
Right.
Now, if he finds the complaint, which is if he does an inquiry, and he doesn't think it's credible, or he thinks the body cam doesn't support what the citizen says or whatever, the chief is not under any obligation to proceed with that
Correct.
complaint. Now, he can't go to discipline without going through the Article 26 notice process, okay? So he has to, if he's gonna decide there's nothing here, there is no officer misconduct here, he can decide, I'm not even gonna give an Article 26 on it. I think that when things are on the fence and you're not quite sure, then the safer practice for the chief is to give an Article 26 to the officer and give the officer a notice of the complaint and an opportunity to respond, because the other side of this thing is that it could just end there. The chief may get a response from the officer and decide there's really no misconduct issue there, and he leaves it alone. So I guess the only thing about what y'all are saying that's a little bit of a concern to me is that I certainly don't know, and HR would not know, City Hall would not know if there are suspensions being handed out at the PD without an Article 26. And you're effectively saying that there are, and that's news to me,
I
okay?
think one of the big things that was becoming an issue here was the time frame, because the original contract is within a reasonable time. And one of the issues that we brought up was trying to make it more time specific. So, for instance, you come in, there's an Article 26, and I let you know about it, and I tell you, hey, there's been a complaint filed on you, and you're getting paperwork coming to you, but I need you to respond to it. And you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, hey, I already told you I needed this from you.
So that I
But-
understand, without having the actual 26. in
Without
front of me.
having an article, a written Article
Yeah, you know,
26?
if that, you know, so basically getting that time frame and keeping it under a business day time frame. Because if I get an Article 26 on Friday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
It's gonna
and
take
I've got to respond to it, and I'm told I need to respond to it
by Monday.
within the 24 hours to provide written notice to a response, and I got it Friday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, how do I turn around and get that back to you
Monday morning.
Monday morning when I'm turning around and I'm trying to get to my legal counsel and it's a weekend?
And that has happened already.
And I think that's why we're asking for the business day issue, making it, if you're gonna give me something, you need to give me business day response times, not,
Well, right now, you are contractually, contractually guaranteed a minimum of 24 hours to provide a response. I guess what I'm hearing you say is, it's not enough.
No, well, no.
no, it's not that it's
You're not-
enough.
It's not enough. You're saying it's not enough.
They're giving it to you on Friday,
But if I'm getting it Friday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
and they want it Monday
and you want it
morning.
Monday morning, now have I had an opportunity to turn around and be able to reach out to my legal?
If that question comes to Diana or me, I would go to the contract and I would say, Chief, they get 24 hours minimum to respond? And if the answer is yes, then I say, then you're legal. Now, if you're saying,
Well, then that's
well,
what
as a
we're saying.
practical matter, that's not enough,
Well,
then let's talk, okay? Because we can make adjustments to that, but I think there's an element of discretion that is left to the department head here as to how much time, and because the department head presumably knows, the ebb and flow of people's schedules,
So then, if I got it at 4 o'clock Thursday afternoon, who's gonna be here Saturday to get it from me?
What's the practice that they've had right now?
practice usually tells you we need it by this day or by,
What
The,
time
the,
of
the
day to
practice has
return
been,
to.
So,
and it's already happened like on 3 occasions. You get served Friday afternoon at 4:30, and you're told this needs to be in my office by Monday at 9. Now, if you're saying, well, yes, by the letter of the contract, they are within their right.
that's what we agreed on, yeah.
Then I'm saying let's be practical. As a lawyer, you can't go to court on Mondays, you can't, or on Saturdays and Sundays. I don't know very many lawyers that'll work on a Saturday or Sunday that or answer their phone on a Saturday and Sunday. So for our legal counsel, she's been good enough to work with us on weekends and help us get a response ready by Monday. But
so really what we need, what y'all are looking for is just on the original contract number 4 is, business days.
right,
They're looking
let's
for
be
business days.
practical, like you said. I mean, that's all we're.
Well, and even that's a little iffy because for them, certainly for uniform services, these guys are on a 24/7. So even a business day might not quite cut it because you're working 40 hours a week, but you're on a 24/7.
We're talking about
We're talking
Your
Monday
business.
So
through
business is,
Monday through
Monday through
Friday.
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 Business day implies Monday through Friday, but you might be on a slightly different
But
schedule.
Our administrators are at Monday through Friday, and that's who we're responding to. So that's what we're
That's
asking.
correct.
We're
you're right
asking to
about
be
that.
compliant with them. That administrator serves us at 4:30. He goes off Saturday and Sunday. Doesn't worry a bit about it. But come Monday morning, he's expecting that response.
Well, I know, I can think of 1 or 2 occasions, and I don't know if it was with this chief or other chief. This is an article that we see in a lot of cities. And, I do recall having some discussions, maybe even with you, where we actually talk about when are you gonna ask to have it by? And the discussion surrounds when is the officer next on shift, when is the next business day, and that's actually written into the Article 43 notice in order to respond. So I know that discussion happens, but again, we're not privy to every single one, okay? We just don't look at every single one, but.
Are those Article 26s asking for a Saturday delivery of that?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah,
I
not
always
that I'm aware
specific
of.
whatever.
They're just doing a Monday.
Yeah,
Right.
the
They'll
ones
put a
that-
date on it.
The ones that I am drafting, chief, is specific as to the date and time.
And I'm not trying to badge, because he has extended days, and he would say, it says Monday, but you know what, bring it to me.
Bring
by
it tomorrow.
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday, right.
He's been good about that, but we don't know if it was ever to change and we get another chief, because of course, we've had a chief that was totally against civil service, didn't care what the contract said, and that's what, and we don't know if it'll happen again. It's just things that we've run into that we want to
Okay.
make sure we have it in the contract.
Fair enough.
And I do want to respond to your deal about, is there discipline being done on verbal complaints? We have.
Without an Article 26.
We've had an officer on
Really?
paid suspension with no complaint filed, and was given an Article 26. So-
Unpaid suspension.
Unpaid suspension.
Unpaid suspension.
And was
suspension.
given an Article 26 for suspension.
But with pending criminal charges?
Yes.
Well, that's a different story. That's
But the
that's
thing
another
is-
deal. That's not an Article 26
But-
issue. That's a 057
That's
issue.
not responded to here. I mean, I understand the chief can do it with or without under 143. but
Right.
At the same time, in the end, there was no complaint filed. The allegations, I mean, it's already been resolved,
There's a criminal charge.
and it's already been resolved.
It hasn't been disposed.
It's in the process of being resolved. So I can tell you all that. So in the end, the charges will be taken care of, and the city now would have to go back and,
Well, being resolved is that there's an order of dismissal of the criminal case. That's what resolved means, okay?
Right.
If there's an open criminal case pending with a charge, and it's a, Class B or above, then that's a whole nother section of the statute.
right.
That's an 057 suspension. And as long as that case is open, that's a temporary suspension under 057. It can become a misconduct under, Article 26. But if the department receives word that there is a criminal charge pending at that level or above, that's an 056 suspension. That's another protocol completely. So I don't want to get those two things mixed up, because technically that's not even a discipline under 143. It's just a special authorized suspension without pay if there is a pending criminal matter of a certain level. Okay? So that doesn't trigger discipline. If the chief wants to, if the officer resolves the criminal case and gets it dismissed, okay, the chief can proceed with discipline on the underlying matter, but he would have to give an Article 26 notice in order to do that.
So he can only be disciplined if, like you said, if he was cleared, matters drop. The Article
Depends on the
26
circumstances.
never
You need an Article 26
For discipline.
to go forward on the underlying,
discipline.
on the underlying facts that were the subject of the criminal matter.
All right,
In
I
other words, the
understand.
suspension without pay is not the discipline. It's completely separate and apart from it.
It's, I know it's, it's
But if he came
confusing
back-
because it is called a temporary suspension, but it's under a statute that's very peculiar it has its own procedure. And I don't think that we even
Addressed it in this.
talk about, no, because we have the whole thing here, it starts out by saying, we're still looking to 143 to help run the department. This is still a civil service department, so we're still, we can modify 143 to some extent through the contract,
Right.
and we have. And if you feel like, hey, we need to do some modifications to the 056 suspension procedure, we're happy to entertain that. But I think we're kind of mixing apples and oranges when we're talking about that and Article 26.
Maybe there needs to be clarification on the two different articles that we're talking about, or how,
It's not an article.
Well, I'm
The
saying-
56 is not part of the contract.
that's what I'm saying, is maybe there needs to be some clarification somewhere within the department guidelines
Or the
that talks
contract.
about,
Well, it would have been specific in the notification to him with a suspension without pay, specifically what statute we were quoting.
Well, it is here, it's here. It's in Article 5A. It tells you right there. The parties understand and agree that the agreement is administered against the backdrop of applicable civil service statutes, subject only to the provisions of 006, which means the bargaining
I
statute.
understand all that, but what I'm trying to get at, so if I wanna address issues like this, that you're talking about under Article 5.6, is it? No, under 143.5.6.
056, yeah, temporary suspensions under
So
05.
I wanna address issues that's going on about that violation. I have to put it in the contract.
We can do it in the contract, otherwise we default to the statute.
And I guess I'll do that. I'll look at it and see.
I would go look at 143.056, because it's a long statute and it's complicated, and because of the terminology, the words that it uses, it's easy to get it confused with discipline matters, and it really sort of runs on its own track. And I'm not that crazy about the way that it's written. It creates a lot of problems from the management point of view. The problem it creates is that you get an officer with a criminal charge, you put him on 056, it's temporary suspension, which is under the law, under the statute, not discipline, quote, not discipline, okay? And then we have no control over the disposition of the criminal case as to when that's gonna get done. So we end up with officers on 056 suspension for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and so they're out of commission.
And
And
they're cleared, the city owes them.
the city might owe them something. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, they would have to appeal that, but it might.
What concerns me in those occasions is that, I'm an IA investigator.
Mm-hmm.
An allegation like that comes in on that article. They temporarily suspend him, but they don't run a concurrent IA to see if he's possibly violated any policies in order to take disciplinary.
They don't have to, they can, the
But
department
wouldn't it be
can.
a good practice to do that? I mean, for the sake of the city's liability for anyone.
You know why it doesn't always happen? Because sometimes what'll happen is that rather than spend the resources of the department on the
They wait for the
underlying
criminal,
facts, they wait for the criminal case to run its course.
which is
And
like you
then
said.
if that gets thrown out or disposed of, or, then you make a TPIA request for the criminal file, and then that's what you use to build the civil service case.
But
So
in
that
that
way you
time-
don't use the resources of the city.
Right, but in that time, you've spent 2-3 years paying a guy.
Well, no, he's
I mean,
unpaid.
unpaid, but,
He's unpaid, but you're short a man.
right, and you
Mhm.
can't replace him because of that.
And that's my criticism of the way that
So
statute's
that's what I'm saying,
written.
if you ran a concurrent IA and you find enough violations to where you could
Mm-hmm.
legally, could recommend he be dismissed, then now you can at least replace him. But-
I know, Enrique, but you know what happens then? And
You
we've
guys
done
just
that.
do no
No,
matter
that's, we
what.
do that. They do a concurrent IA, they file a discipline charge, okay? Well, then, and Ernie will tell you this, then the officer, files an appeal and says, I need to abate this case because I have a pending criminal case. So the officer, and that's a statutory right the officer has. So as soon as the officer says, I'm appealing, but I'm abating till this criminal matter is over, the city has no way to override that.
So what, and I'm
And
not worried.
it
so
happens
much
to me
about the
over and
city.
over and over again.
What I'm worried about is the department, being that man short.
Yeah.
Position there,
Yeah.
lingering on.
It's a problem.
So there's nothing we can put into our contract to
Well,
help fix that.
I mean, we can put our heads together about it and I mean,
I
we
can
have
see
some
something.
limited ability
I
to
like
be
it that way.
creative about it.
No, and when I'm looking for the
You
proposal
might be
that's fair to
surprised.
everyone, not that's just protecting us, but that's fair to everybody. But that would bring a quick resolve to issues like this.
But you're-
I don't wanna drag it out for years.
But we don't control the criminal process
that-
is the
that's what I'm
problem.
saying.
We just don't control
The
it.
criminal process can take years,
Yeah,
and
It
we
can.
know that. And-
it can and does.
But there should be some way we can fix it in our contract to where it is fair for both parties.
Well, I don't see how you can fix something that neither side has any control over. Okay, I mean, we can agree all day long, but neither you, the officer, the association, or the city has any control over the pace at which the district attorney's office works.
No,
We have none. And, you know, the chief doesn't have to put somebody on 056. There's no legal requirement that he do it. He can just say, yeah, there's a felony charge against you, but you know what? You just keep coming to work. Okay, well, that's another whole set of problems, because if something can go wrong, it will, and the next thing you know, the chief says, no, that's fine, you know, just keep coming to work. I'm not gonna put you on 056. You've got a pending felony charge, and the next thing you know, that officer is involved in a shooting, some major drug bust or whatever, and guess what? Okay, the credibility of that officer as a witness in the criminal case is shot. And that's the problem. You know, that's the problem.
And
It's
that's-
like
and I-
it's like, and I've had this chief has asked me, can I keep him working? I said, yes, you can. He goes, I'm short. Can I keep him? Yes, you can. But just be aware that if something happens and that officer becomes a critical witness in something, you're gonna have that hanging over you. So if you're willing to run that risk,
But
fine.
that's also something the
but-
officer has hanging over, not technically the chief, because it's the officer's credibility.
No, the chief has it hanging over him too, trust me. The
whole,
chief,
and you're right, it's the whole department.
because the outcry is gonna be, why the heck did you leave that officer working when he's got a criminal charge? That's what the recrimination is gonna be.
And again, that, I would hope that would be something we could probably try to fix.
Man, if you got a solution to
I
it, we're
know,
all
that's why-
ears, okay?
Really, that's why I'm
I'm
asking.
Oh, well,
welcome to it.
hey, man, I've been
Make me sleep
studying
better at
this.
night.
Trust me, I've been studying this for a long, long time. The 056, you know, it's a problem. And and the problem always keeps coming back to that we don't control the pace of the criminal case in the DA. We just don't control it, you know? So we're happy to talk about it. We're happy to talk about specific issues and problems, you know. Legally, if we had a solution, we can agree and write up something in the contract that addresses it.
All right, and all I'm trying to do is find a solution to the problem. You know. I don't want to add problems to it. I want to find a solution.
Yeah, no,
And then
otherwise, we're
we
just
can
stuck
both
with the
sides.
statute. You know, the statute is, 143, which is the old Article 1269M. I'm sure, I think you're old enough to have been around when it was Article 20. You maybe not, okay. It was Article,
I don't know how old
you don't know what Article 12, okay, so this used to be Article 1269M, okay? It was Article 1269M for a long time, okay? Civil service in the state of Texas has been around since 1948.
I'm not that old.
Okay. And I'm not either, but I'm just telling you, it's been around since 1948, after the war. It was Article 1269M for a really long time. Even despite all those years of experience across the state, it's got a lot of glitchy stuff in it. And the beauty of the contract process is that sometimes we can make adjustments to it through the contract to help it work, at least in the place where you have the contract. But some things are just, you push here and then something pops up there, and then you push here and then something pops up there. So, that's the problem in this area. It's very, but if you have a specific problem or concern that's happened here in Alice with an officer or group of officers, we're more than happy to discuss it and entertain not a resolution for that one officer, but a policy level solution that will take the edge off of it.
And our goal is, like I said, is not directed towards any specific incident or
Yeah.
officer. It's, I learn from everything I do, and in order to learn, you make adjustments for it in case it ever happens again.
Right.
It's already there, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
I want to set it up to where in case if it happens again.
And we're not against you on that, project.
Well, I forgot, we got off 10 and there. Going to,
We're on
I guess,
6.
6? Did we do number 4? Okay, yes.
We talked about
Number
anti-business.
6, upon request of the employee or employee's representative, said employee or representative shall be given a copy, and that was already in there. I believe it's already in there. I don't know why that's, or maybe I didn't. No, I added on it.
No, that's it.
I shall be given an exact copy of any written statement of the employee execute or, hang on, this goes.
Yeah.
Where the question is audio, video, or stenographically recorded, the employee representative shall be permitted to record or transcribe from the original recording of the owner's own statement or interview upon his or her request. I don't remember why I put that in there. That was something that I think Celeste wanted in there.
Yeah.
I know she wanted number 7 in there about the lauder mill. She's not here to explain it, so I can't really go too far on that one.
Yeah, I know what it is, because I've talked to her about it.
Yeah, I
I know
think she's-
exactly where she's coming from on this. I mean, we do have, under G, you know, we have a requirement for a lauder mill hearing before any discipline can be imposed.
I think her, and I could be mistaken, but I think a lot of that issue is because it's not addressed as a lauder mill, because that's how she's always asking me, is that the lauder mill? I'm like, I have no
Yeah,
idea.
look, lauder mill is simply the name of the case
Right,
that says that
we have the.
you get a
pre-disciplinary-
pre-discipline hearing.
Right.
So it's really not,
And I think
a
that's
lauder
her-
mill hearing is just the name of the case. The process is really a pre-discipline due process hearing, and that's why it's called pre-discipline due process hearing.
So we
so-
addressed it in.
And which is what kind of surprises me, that you're telling me that the chief is imposing suspension days without an Article 43 and apparently without a lauder mill hearing, without a due process hearing.
No.
I'm surprised at
He,
that.
he does have the authority to issue a verbal reprimand, but you're saying that he's actually taking people and suspending them?
That's what I've been told by, and I know Celeste is complaining about that too. because she hasn't
Suspending them
been-
without pay?
I hate to say, I'm sure, but that's what I've been told. And this is not recent, this was about 2 years ago.
We'll ask, but I would
Like I
be,
said, a lot of things have gotten better, and it could be due to the amount of complaints that we've handled here recently, that we've all learned a lot from. But,
okay. But I know where Celeste is coming from on that, so that's
so
not a
we
problem.
don't need to address that one, because I'm sure she's discussed it with you. She also wanted, and she didn't get to talk to me, but she talked to Ernie about, having some provision in there where the officers can review the video or audio of the incident. Like if there was an on-duty incident where, a citizen was complaining about his behavior or something, that they can review the body camera audio before they was it before they provide their statement?
Before they provide the interview,
Or before they provide
The
the
statement. which would be looking at body cam footage, photos, you know, basically the evidence against them pretty much.
That's, I guess we would add it as number 8.
She'd be able to address that a little more. She's
And
got
so
that
you-
in Corpus's contract also.
Well, we have J. J is intended to cover that.
On this same section?
But when-
Yeah, after an IA file is substantially complete, but prior to the pre-discipline hearing with the department head, the pertinent contents of the IA file may, upon written request by the officer, be disclosed to the officer or the legal representative
No, I
in
think
preparation for the due process hearing.
This is
She
all
wants-
Before.
before. You get your notice like you're supposed to, go in, hey, they said
They
you,
wanna give them
you smacked somebody, you know, on a traffic stop. Well, show me the evidence, you know, it says that, basically just getting to look
It
at the
says
video.
prior, it says prior.
Well,
But they're
That's
saying-
prior to the
No, this is
pre-disciplinary
after
hearing.
an
This is-
investigative file. This is before.
So that would
When you
be,
serve your Article 26, they want a statement from you.
Right?
What she's saying is allow him to review the body cam and provide you the statement after reviewing.
Oh, you want to review some materials before you're giving a response?
Yeah, that's, I believe what she said,
Yeah.
or what she wants.
she's got that implemented in the Corpus.
Okay,
Christi
that's a
video
little
also.
bit, so, okay.
And again, that's something she has to, she told Ernie about it.
Mhm.
I didn't know anything about it. And after that, we have no changes until we get to H. A lot of this is Celeste. The time and place for the hearing with the department head, which shall be no less than 3 business days. And I was just adding because 24-hour notice, please give them 3 business days, which, like you said, they work a rotating shift. Most of the time, these guys are working nights. weekends, whatever, he's given 3 days' notice to know that they're gonna be here on Thursday for this day. And they can make arrangements and do what they've gotta do. That's basically all we want, it's just more notice. On K, we added some stuff to 1.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Giving the chief the authority to suspend and not to exceed up to 240 hours. That was again something Celeste wanted. I don't remember her argument to me about it, but I know she said it would benefit both sides if we did something like that.
240 hours is how many
I think
days?
it's 15 days. Is it 30 days?
30 days. Right now, he only has 15 days.
15 or jump to indefinite,
Right. So here we give.
or get an agreement.
Right.
And here it gives him 30 days without an agreement, or indefinite. So he's giving a little bit more latitude to suspend more in lieu of firing or having to get an agreement with the officer.
Really? And you all are wanting to give division heads authority to suspend?
That again was something that.
Really?
she
Are you
addressed.
sure?
Well, I don't agree with it.
Careful what you
entirely.
ask for,
Where
man.
Yeah, well, where
And
the sergeants
who do
are
you
concerned,
define, I'm sorry,
I don't
before we even go any further, who do you define as a division head? Only your
The ones
LTs?
that the ones that I identified, yes. The lieutenant
Oh,
and the
you
sergeant.
go down, okay.
The one that I believe the lieutenant should, and this is only going to accountability, no more pointing fingers, no more, no more, well, you could have done something about it. If he knows of a situation, he has the authority to suspend. In lieu of bringing the chief into it and waiting for the chief to do something about it. They can still appeal it to the chief and go through that process, but he could at least take action if he knows something's going on. And that again, the sergeants, a lot of people, some of the officers are concerned about that. So I might end up striking the sergeants from that.
That's an interesting proposal. I don't think I've ever seen that.
CCPDs.
CCPD does that?
They
And
do
how many
that.
officers do they have?
But their level is at command level, captains. and-
Yeah. They're like,
Huh?
they're like 300 plus officer force. aren't
Right,
they?
and again, this is something that Celeste thought of.
I think she was thinking with the intentions of also having some type of progressive discipline in there instead of jumping straight to suspensions each time. Because I don't think it's really addressed in there
Yeah.
as
it
far as
isn't addressed.
progressive, from counseling, written reprimand, things like that, all the way up.
And that was the only thing she really
When it
didn't want me to propose any of the discipline,
Well, that
I
is
think
okay.
give you the proposal.
Okay.
So that's something she
Okay.
might add to
Yeah.
later on. Don't believe there's anything in 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. The only thing I've done on the definitions, and I guess that would be something that has to change because on day we have it as an 8-hour period. And what I was trying to do by adding the 10 hours was to distinguish the shifts. And you're saying we can handle it through, not through overtime or mandatory, but extra duty. I guess we would have to define that in there. And then nothing else on that, and then we come to our pay table, which I'm missing.
You should be toward after all the grievance forms.
Sorry,
After your grievance forms?
the pay table,
Yes.
that's it. The pay tables, there are some changes to that. There is this one. Okay, I forgot to give myself copies. On the pay table, this is for the 2017-18 pay, which would just be for, actually, starting October, with the increase of the pay, just to basically get back our 1.5%.
Excuse me.
I'm not sure my math is correct, so that would have to be checked by, it was done at just 1.5 based on that salary amount. The second page, page 2, is for the following year, for an increase of another 1.5%. And again, I'm not sure my math, that would be something y'all would have to look at. Nothing else was changed on section 2 of the longevity. Nothing
This is a 1.5 across the board.
Right. Nothing was changed on the TCO levels, on the college levels. The authorized assignment pay, we have added two of them. The SWAT team, $50 a month stipend for, not stipend, but,
Concern.
incentive pay. And we've added, and this is only for field training officers while in the capacity of field training to do it. So we're gonna extra $100 a month. And that's not all the time that we have field training officers actually operating. Right now, we've got, how many field training officers? 3 or 4 that are training, warning officers?
There are 4 officers that are in training.
So that, and that would only be probably for 3 months. What's the time? 3 months? 3 months.
They're going through 20 physical workday phases, which probably breaks down to about 3 months long.
So right now, it's a monthly, for SWAT, a monthly allotment of 50.
No, it's proposed new.
That's a proposal.
They don't receive anything currently.
For SWAT?
That's correct.
The team just got
So
reestablished.
okay, unless I'm looking, let me see. I'm looking at their proposal. Let me look at their,
The only one we have currently in the contract is the CID assignment.
oh, I see. Oh, okay. So you're adding that.
Yes,
So right now, the only authorized assignment right now is CID.
correct.
And you're adding SWAT and FTO.
Correct, and there has been some discussion, they wanted to also add the breathalyzer, we used to have.
The previous contract
I-
prior to this one had
I don't remember.
CID,
CID,
FTO,
TOs,
and
breathalyzer.
intoxilizer operators. During the negotiation period for the
Last contract.
last contract, there was some discussions of trying to reduce some benefits, and there was an agreed upon reduction
At that time.
of the FTO and the intoxilizer.
So it was
And,
in there at first and then it came out. Okay.
And I don't have the numbers as far as how many we have. I believe somebody told me it was 7. I don't know how many toxicology certified officers. I
I
didn't
think
mention.
your numbers
to
have
them
dropped, maybe,
Actually, I think we're about the same,
We're
because
about the same
they
now.
did send some officers
here recently.
recently to go become certified because their increase in DWI cases has occurred.
Tested out.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
And the only thing I did on the last page is I believe, and again, my math could be wrong, that doesn't include the frames. Those are my estimated totals that would increase with the amounts we've asked for. I could be off, I'm not that good at right now. And that's basically all our proposals are. My biggest concern for membership is with disciplinary issues and the IAs and things like that. I just want to make sure every officer gets their due. You know, that they're treated fairly and receive everything's done correctly. I don't believe some of the stuff that's happened is fair, but I mean.
Well,
Done wrong, they done
and
wrong.
yeah, I mean, there's a difference between, you know, the existing format, the article and how it's working and whether it's enough or not. Like, for example, is saying 24-hour minimum notice enough? I mean, that's a minimum. It does leave to the discretion of the chief, you know, how much more beyond. You're kind of saying it's not enough. But there's a
Well,
difference
it's
between the
not-
design of the article and whether or not it's being followed.
Right.
So if it's not being followed, I mean, that's a different problem.
I mean,
But we'll need to ask about that, because this is the first I hear about it, but that doesn't really mean anything because I'm not here every day, so.
And like I said, my biggest concern would be, he has gotten better, that I give. Like I said, I know he serves notices now, and he says, it says Monday, but yeah, give it to me Tuesday. So you're okay. That, and like you said, that's him saying, well, it's minimum 24 hours, but we're gonna give you a little bit
We're
more.
gonna give you 48 or whatever, yeah. Mhm.
And I'm not saying he's.
We did that on
taking-
purpose. I mean, there's a floor there, but then above that, it's sort of
Discretionary.
There's
discretionary, you know?
But my concern would be if in the future, you know, he leave or something happen. and he gets
Somebody
stuck
new
with
comes in.
somebody Like our former chief,
Yeah.
that just didn't care what this contract said, he was gonna do what he wanted when he wanted. You know, I'm just trying to protect the officers.
Yeah.
From that,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Caucus or come back.
but that's all we have.
we get that. So, well, we need the caucus, I guess. And
We'll give you all
it's,
the rulers, less of us.
it's 11. So, you wanna just caucus and take a lunch break at then, or work through lunch, or what are your,
However y'all want to do, y'all can.
I mean, I think our caucus is gonna
Like at
take,
one,
I think we're gonna need
Take some time.
Yeah.
40 more, you know, we might need the full hour. You
That's
wanna
fine.
meet back here at 1 or something?
Yeah, let's do that. Is that okay with you guys, 1 o'clock?
Do you wanna just meet back here at
You don't
1?
need me. No, you don't need me. I'll be okay.
Does that work for you all?
Yeah, she's
I
gotta
won't
get-
be, I won't be available after 1, but
That's right.
you
Oh,
guys
after
can
1 you won't be available.
But y'all can continue.
Well, I mean, technically, we've got their proposal,
Unless
right?
you
I
wanna-
mean, we've got their proposal, we've heard them out. I mean, what I'm sensing is that we got a little legwork to do, just go over the proposal. We have a little legwork to do with the chief about, okay, how are we running the IAs?
We'll be coming back with the IAs too, with Celeste to come in here and pretty much explain it all. There may have been some stuff we didn't add in there that she wants in there.
Which there's still time to do.
And so
Yeah, 'cause
we-
we're-
When do we have? next
we'll
week?
completely
We don't have
revisit the entire section on the
Yeah.
next one also.
Yeah.
She,
So, I mean, really, as far as what we need to do you all have any questions of them? I mean, I think that's really, because I think we can technically break, and then we'll end the session, and then we'll go do our caucus. And so the only issue is there anything else we need from them right now? Any additional
Do we
information?
want to schedule another meeting right now and,
I think that would probably be the best thing.
yeah,
That way it gives you all the rest of the day to figure out.
yeah.
I know the budget
Proposals
is due soon, so that's why
Yeah, let me pull
I
up.
didn't want to reschedule this one
But-
for now.
We'd be looking at though, scheduling wise, like the first week of July, even if it's next week is not gonna work.
Let me call my schedule up.
Okay.
Fourth of July, it's a weird week. You have the council meeting.
Second.
How much time do we need to caucus and
Today?
over the counter? We hadn't, well, I guess Becky handled the ground rules meeting, but we don't have another meeting scheduled right now.
No, sir. And today will be day 1.
And today is day
Marking
1.
toward the impasse deadline.
So, today's the 15th.
Are there any days
Oh,
that don't
like
work
the
for you all?
28th,
Of July.
well, last week, 28th or 29th, no?
I'm on vacation. I mean, I'm
When are
going to
you
be-
out?
You're done with June or July?
In June.
I'm out the 25th through the 29th.
Yeah. What about the
You're out the
second?
25th or 28th?
What
Okay.
about the 2nd or 3rd of July? That's that next week.
Um, Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, July 9th is gonna be the 61st day of the fire.
That doesn't have anything to do with
I just didn't want you
Let's
to
see.
schedule it.
The first meeting, right? Yeah.
it. Oh, it's just a day. It doesn't mean anything. There's nothing scheduled.
Day.
The 3rd, 5th or 6th.
Anything after the 10th, this will have
I like to read it back up.
About Tuesday, the 3rd. Does
That'll
Tuesday, the 3rd work for you guys?
That work for you guys? The
Yeah.
third?
Tuesday, the 3rd at 9:30?
9:30, that's what it is.
Yeah.
9:30.
Good, I'm gonna be out Wednesday, the rest of the week.
Okay, yeah, 9:30 on the 3rd?
9:30, Tuesday, the 3rd, and then we will have a response and then we can start from there. And they'll be here, right?
She went blank for me. Why am I looking at this calendar?
Okay, Tuesday, the 3rd at 9:30.
Okay.
Will you email me the Word version of this?
Yes,
Or do y'all have it? Will you get it to him and then he'll get it to me?
I just had it pulled up a minute ago.
Email me the Word
You
version.
have the version I sent you, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna give him that one.
Yes, but all he has to do is take out the notes. That was the thing I had an issue with. But
Yeah, just email me the
They were-
the version that has the changes so that
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to retype stuff.
Pardon? So, just for clarification, we will be adjourning then today and then just set for the next meeting.
Yeah, I
Fine
think
with that.
so. I mean, is there anything else we need to, I think we've covered
I don't think we
it, the
need
stuff
anything.
they
We're gonna
want.
bring some
I
else
mean,
for the
only,
next one.
I just want to make it clear, some of the disciplinary part might be changed by Celeste.
Okay.
She wanted to know.
That's
that-
fine.
that items
That's
that
fine.
we discussed about the video, because she sent me an email.
She said
about
it
it.
to
Yeah,
us.
and I've been working with Celeste on, not just here, but in other places, so I mean, I think I understand. Those are details about IA protocol that,
And the only thing is,
I-
like, we're trying to do is make it easier for everybody to understand, like, when you said if the chief calls you, tell him, go in contract. Oh, that way it's easier for him. And that's all my goal is, to make it easier for everybody if it's in the contract. Hopefully we can do that.
All right. Well, there's nothing else, and we'll adjourn this meeting at 11:12. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.